we know as teachers, and if you're a parent as well, that we are very diverse. And so our students and the students that we serve are extremely diverse. They have come from different backgrounds, have different knowledge and skill sets based on those experiences. So it's really important for us as teachers in general, and of course, no less as online instructors, to make sure that we meet our students where they are. And that is, of course, at various points. And so our goal is to encourage and promote proficiency. And so in order to do that, we want to make sure that we pinpoint exactly where students are, and then we work with and build that skill set and their proficiency to get ideally to where they need to be for that specific course. And so, there are various strategies in which we can employ to do that. But that kind of pre-assessment and understanding of where they are is the most crucial piece. And then, of course, in determining the next steps.
When I need to give them a direct message, what I do is sending an email to let them know what a specific direction do I need to, for them to do. That's basically what I do, sending an email. Sometimes I have private conference with them after the class, or I try to set a time to meet with them. But I really, it's important to try to keep, the individualized learning with them, even, remotely.
The kids are not going to learn everything the same way. We're not all, robots who you can just program it in. And once you master the present tense and this bit of vocabulary, you'll be able to do this. That might work for some, it doesn't work for all. And so personalized learning has a lot of different ways that you could go with it. I mentioned choice boards earlier. It's another thing, again, that I like choice boards because when the students, especially at the beginning, can take some ownership of what they want to do and where they feel comfortable, because there's also the affective filter with language. And so if a student is like, yeah, I don't understand you, and my wall goes up and I'm done, then they won't move on. But if you let them start with things that they feel confident at, then you can kind of come back and say, okay, now that you've done and showed that you understand this, now let's take it to a different place. And so the personalized learning lets the kids feel successful, lets them move on. And it's not saying that they can't skip learning of a certain type. They can't skip all the speaking, but they don't have to do the speaking first. Whereas other kids, like the risk taker, and they don't care if they make mistakes, they'll just blurt out answers. And then they might have all the grammar wrong. So, it's a way that you can continue to cycle it around and meet the different needs for the students.
The online environment definitely helps. It depends on the learning management system used. I think Canvas is very strong in this, and that it, especially through Mastery Pass, which I think is one of the lesser used features of Canvas, is really a way to personalize learning in a way that's not done in other areas, or not done as cleanly, I guess would be the best way, due to the setup and being able to have some sort of pre-assessment, and then that you give to all students, and then based on the score on whatever that pre-assessment is, they go down a specific pathway. And so the technology really allows you to pinpoint exactly where the students are, and then send them down the direction, whether that's a remediation, reviewing of concepts, completing additional assignments to get to that end point. And for students who are your higher end learners, likewise, it's important for those students to just not be stagnant and stop. We want to push and accelerate those students. And so that would, be able to include some enrichment and supplemental activities to meet their particular needs. In a traditional classroom, you don't have the ability to have all of those components necessarily moving at once in a very smooth way. So I think that's one of the drawbacks. I also think the drawback is the data piece. So if you are using paper-based assessments and then having to transfer, you can do it, but it takes so much time. So the technology really allows you to save time and become more efficient through being able to track and know exactly what students know and can do. It helps you to create those pathways and streamline them for use not only for one semester, but from semester to semester, and then pulling those reports and then reassessing and starting that cycle over again. The one thing I would say that a drawback with technology, it's not really a drawback, it's just more of a consideration to make for teachers who teach online, is to be cognizant of the synchronous time that you spend with students, and to really make sure you're maximizing that synchronous time. I've seen teachers use synchronous times in ways that really could be a video. And that's a poor use of time, a valuable time between the instructor and the student. So in the face-to-face classroom, you take for granted that environment where you're physically there with them and can communicate and interact with them. And so a consideration for the online instructor would be to make sure that you're maximizing any synchronous time you have with the students. Systemically, I think there are policies that are in place that do impede personalized learning. It varies from state to state. It sometimes varies from district to school. I think that some schools and districts are much more on board. Those who are more focused on standards-based or mastery-based learning seem to get it more than others. And I think the push, which is not just from the education system, but K-12, but from higher ed and from parents, just the traditional way of approaching grading systems makes it very muddy to think about, and understanding that equity is not everybody gets the same thing, because we're all very different. And so even though one person, whether it's quantity of assignments or the quality of assignments, may look different from another one, it's not unfair. And I think overcoming that stigma of everybody needs that same assessment or set of assessments is kind of a paradigm shift that some states and schools and districts aren't prepared for. Even though they say they are, they're not really quite ready for that, because it's a constant battle between that old school of thought that everybody should get the same thing because it's not fair, and understanding what equity looks like as compared to equal.
I'm really happy with my virtual classes. I cannot complain. And most of my students, they behave so well. They're very responsible, turning in, the assignments. Also, I'm really amazed how the participation, because, it's a foreign language, how the participation, it works well most of the time. I even had the scavenger hunt recently, and it was very fun. They were trying to look things all over the house, and it was good. It's been good. Of course, it's been a challenge also, but I'm amazed and surprised how well it has been working. Mm-hmm.
I think it definitely goes both ways. I think for the students that are good at communication, and because in our school, I teach for two, but for North Carolina virtual, the students are not required in French, as not a critical language. They are not required to ever actually meet with me and talk with me one-on-one. A lot of them do. And when they do, then it helps it make it much easier for these conversations to take place. But when they don't, I'm kind of guessing, did they not do this because they just thought it was hard? Did they not do this because their technology wasn't good that day? Did they not do this because they're surrounded by other people and speaking was what they didn't want? I'm guessing why they didn't do something instead of knowing why they didn't. Now, in my other role, where it's a much smaller role, I'm just a conversation coach. But with that one, because I'm a conversation coach, I meet with the students every other week. We have a bigger relationship, and so there, it's much easier for me to tailor how to say, okay, so what I want you to do next is focus on this because you've shown that you've mastered something, versus when I don't have that same communication with the students. Having said that, with online learning, I can personalize it without the other kids knowing. And so that is an advantage. If I have established that relationship and the students are reading my messages, I can say, you know what, I want you to do this because this is showing where you are weaker, and it will allow you to show that you've mastered it. Maybe you got behind because of an illness. It will allow you to show that you still have the skills. And you're not singling them out in a classroom. It can be done, completely behind the scenes. So it kind of can go both ways, but it can definitely be a struggle when you don't have the great communication with a student.
I've not individually researched, personalized learning. It would be really neat. I'm sure somebody's done it. And so it'd be neat to look to see what research has been done on an experimental group of students with the curriculum, same learning outcomes, et cetera, that have a personalized learning setup as compared to another group of students, same curriculum through a traditional setup. So I think that would be experimentally, that would be really cool, but that's not always possible, right? So I think for an individual teacher who is trying to measure the effectiveness of her own personalized learning, the biggest thing is growth, in my opinion. So yes, you have learning outcomes, but employing pre-assessments and then having clearly defined, whether you use standards or I can statements or what have you, and then measuring the mastery of those and the growth of those from beginning, and depending the time span, beginning, middle, and end, but definitely beginning and end, to see the growth in that. And then I think that should hopefully be the most meaningful data. If you have a situation where you have multiple online teachers doing the same thing, then leveraging sort of a PLC, professional learning community, or an ELC, e-learning community, could be really powerful there to collaborate and share strategies and common assessments or things of that nature to help strengthen the group.
This comes back to the communication. When the students are following what you've set out, so if I send them a personalized plan and I say, after your illness, we're not going to do this, this, and this, but I need you to show mastery of this, this, and this. And here are the different ways that you can get there. If they do, I'm a chart person, so I'll kind of send them, and they can then see that they're checking off what they can do. If they're using something like an e-linguafolio, they can self-assess and say, okay, I did still meet that concept, and they can check off what they did. When I'm doing the guesswork of saying the kid has completely skipped all of these types of assignments, I'm going to just guess why they did that. I might have guessed completely wrong. And so that's where it can be an extra challenge that online learning has to get there, but it doesn't have to be. If a kid is still, it's the communication. If a kid is communicating, then you can address where they are, and if they're not, then it becomes guesswork.
Honestly, it's not something that's just for a specific set of students. If we're really acknowledging that all students can learn and should learn, and that we also acknowledge the diversity that exists, then it's kind of a no-brainer that every student should be a candidate for personalized learning.
I think their discipline, basically. They have to have a good discipline. For example, I have my second period class. It is really good. I mean, most of them doesn't have maybe the best grades, but they are very, very responsible. They're very disciplined. They turn in their assignment. They worry when they don't turn in. They worry when they are absent. They check on me. They send me an email to apologize if they don't, they're not present. For example, doctor appointment. So that's I was thinking today actually that I was going to congratulate that class because I was thinking these students are gonna be, they're gonna be succeed in college because they're really, they have a really discipline. And that's important. That's mostly what you have to do, that you are responsible of your work and show that to your teacher or your instructor. Mhm.
There are different ways. If a student has fallen behind because of an illness, I have had several students that have had COVID this year, and so they've been totally not tuned in, or even if they didn't, someone in their house didn't, and so or had it, then it led to an extra issue or Wi-Fi issues with this remote learning as an extra challenge that we've had this year. Those students can be good if there's that communication, because they want to still show that they've mastered concepts and they don't want to do a whole lot of busy work. And so when you can show that you're working with them and that they're still making progress, they're still learning, they're still able to check off what they can do, then it works really well. Another time it works well is if a student is just really wants to excel. A kid wants to get into the AP level of the course and they want to just keep going. They want to show that what they've mastered, and they want to show that not only have they mastered it, but they want more. And so it works really well with those students. So it can work. I've had students that have had different kinds of IEPs in the past, and it can work well with them because I don't want to penalize them in their areas of struggle, but I still want them to master the language. And so I like eLinguaFolio or other charts because I like the kids to be able to show what they've done, check it off, feel like they are contributing, and then it can lead to a positive way for online learning to work.